for pilot?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm Michelle.
I'm Mary Kathryn.
Nice to meet you. Mary Kathryn. That's an Irish name. Is it?
No.
It's not. Oh, please just say that.
Well, when I moved up here and I would tell people I was Mary Kathryn, I got... Well, usually I was
What
asked if I
parish
was
do you
Catholic.
belong to?
Yes. But,
which one of your sisters is a nun?
My mother's from the South, and I was named for her grandmother, who was Mary Kathryn.
Okay.
Double names.
Double names, right,
South,
right.
Very popular. So.
But no Irish or Catholicism in there.
No, no Catholicism. Scots-Irish, with an emphasis on the Scots.
Yeah. I have lots of relatives that are Mary Kathryn, Mary Kathleen, Kathleen Marie.
Yeah.
Quite the variety.
Yeah. So I learned after I moved up here for just business, I just go by Mary. Makes it easier.
To stop having people ask you.
Yeah.
It's a pretty name, though.
Well, thank you.
So, I'll start. Sound good? A lot of times when I'm working with someone, I love to have their partners in to talk, because obviously I don't get the full picture of anything. When people come in here, that's it. I can only go with what they're giving me. So a lot of times it's just so much more helpful to get another person's perspective, how they can help the person that's in here kind of explain what the problem is or what the goals might be. Right now I'm in a position of trying to figure out the best way to proceed from here. So we're in a pause mode, like what have we been doing so far and where are we going to go from here? So that's kind of where I am. So, do you have any expectations of today or concerns or anything you want to bring up?
Not concerns. I looked up on psychology today, and this one doctor talked about irritability, and when you're irritable, you have a lower threshold and a disproportionate response. And talked about ways of reducing irritability, and I believe that is where I have been for a while.
Okay.
Irritability.
So that's kind of what's been on your mind this week? Just thinking through that a little bit? Or?
Understanding that.
Understanding it, yeah.
Yes. And
the relationship.
You talked about irritability as a symptom.
Right.
And I don't want to be irritable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have irritability.
Well, as a symptom of what?
Depression.
Right.
In males that you mentioned.
Right.
And I don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I would love to just hear from you anything you have to add about him coming to counseling. He came in with, he said his issue was he had angry outbursts at home. I would love to hear anything that you had to say about that, your perspective, your feelings, insight, even if they're not the same as his, anything you feel comfortable telling me about that.
Right now?
Yep.
Well, I recognized that a lot of it was compounded by the stress that he was under.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually started before he lost his job.
Recent job.
It seemed like it's been building. So even dare I say, 4 years ago, it was when I started noticing more. And I think I'm sure some of it had to do with work, just because of the environment that he was in there at work, but also with the fact that he was dealing with teenagers.
Okay, yeah.
And having to come to the understanding that now that they're teenagers, their sole, or primarily a lot of their attachment was in the home, but that was no longer the case.
Correct.
Because they are becoming independent, and so they are starting to cut the cords, and he was having difficulty with that. And I suspected that part of it had to do with his background and the fact that he feels this loss, not loss, because I don't think he felt like he ever had a really strong, stable family unit, because he's told me he never really felt loved by his mother. His parents divorced, the situation with his stepfather, I don't know what all he's discussed with you. So I knew his desire for us was to have this really strong core family unit, and in his mind, in order to have that was, I don't know that he was thinking of this consciously, but it seemed to me by the way he was reacting was that, if they're becoming attached to others outside, then he's losing that that family unit. And while he recognizes in his head that yes, we're raising them to become adults and that they need to leave, I think operationally that wasn't working. So it started.
So in his head, he could tell us, this is developmentally where my kid should be.
Right.
But in the home and operationally, as you mean, like behavior and emotionally and relationally, that was not happening.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So, and it just kept building, and then, so as he's having to deal with these teenagers, you end up with 3 teenagers in the house. That's a lot.
Did you know I have 3 teenagers in my house?
He told me you have a
17-year-old
son?
Yeah, I have 18, 17, and 14.
Okay.
I just want you to know.
So you understand what's going on. Yes.
It's much more, it's a lot easier to help you guys.
Yeah. Yes, I know, because you're not emotionally caught up in it. Yes, so
I'm understanding the whole,
Yeah.
the whole development. It's way different than reading about it in my psych book or taking adolescent class book. Okay, go ahead.
So understood that was going on.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with the job, first the job transition, and that other job was very stressful, and then the job loss, and all of that, and then it just compounded, and it kind of exploded. And so...
Can you tell me what the explosion looked like and about when that happened?
Well, it's been building. And
Okay. I can wait for that.
It seems, came more to a head last year when our now 17-year-old son entered the program at EMU, and which was very different. And so the way his schooling was occurring was different from anybody else's, because the other 2, I was still homeschooling and they were just taking electives. Benjamin's full time in this other program, which is an intense program, and so we had also some personality conflicts going on there. So you have Benjamin, who's first time, full-time in school, otherwise he's been homeschooled the whole way through. So he's feeling stressed himself.
Yeah.
Because not only is he full-time in this, but it's a very intense program. And he had,
it's all consuming.
He admitted,
it's completely consuming.
It is, and he admitted to me halfway through it that he had serious doubts about whether he could.
Yeah, most kids don't even go home. They just spend the whole day on the campus and they go home to sleep just so they can compartmentalize. It's so overwhelming there.
Right. And he was also playing football at the same time, so you add that on top of that. So Mike wasn't understanding why Benjamin was having to stay up so late. You need your sleep then, because he's concerned teenagers need sleep. So there was that conflict going on, and it just, it seemed to be, it was bad. because I felt like Mike didn't really understand why Benjamin had to spend so much time on his studies. Plus, probably with him, because when he was in high school, he didn't spend time on his studies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's bright, he can pass the tests.
Yeah.
He just didn't pour himself into the work, and he wasn't encouraged to do it at home.
And life is so different now.
Yes.
Right?
So
everything.
not
Everything
understanding what's going on there, and then so that we would have these mini, Mike would come to, because he'd be coming home late from work. Ben's up studying, so he'd be, Ben, you need to be going to bed, and Ben is like, I need to be studying, and Mike's saying, what are you doing all day long?
Try not to drown here.
Yes. But what are you doing all day long? Why do you have to spend all these hours late studying?
Did you feel like you were in the middle of everything?
Yes. And
trying to translate, communicate, support.
Well, and I'm trying to mediate, and I'm trying to keep peace, and I don't believe I a lot of times handled it the right way. Now, my background is I had a father who's very domineering, very authoritarian, and I had always dreamed of and I never had a good relationship with him. Okay. So my dream had always been, my kids are going to grow up with an understanding dad who's going to really express love to them, and,
up to the age of 10, and then he's gonna...
and they're not going to have the turmoil that I experienced in my house. So I recognize that I had that dream, and that's how it's, cause for a while there I was really fighting. I felt like I'm fighting for my expectations, for my family. So when I say I was fighting, it was like, so I was always getting into the middle of trying to, help everybody understand what's going on, and don't you see, this is what's happening. But the result was I was really causing more problems. So I've had to let go of that somewhat. I don't do a great job of it all the time.
But you're aware of it.
I am aware of it.
You know when you're not doing it.
Yes. But so that seemed to be, that was last year, with Ben, and it was like it was just building, and then he had the stress with work and changing, and then being unemployed, and then we have our 21-year-old daughter who's like feeling really constrained, like she's not allowed to make decisions on her own, and so, and we had our 19-year-old son who really, I think Mike has a personality tendency where which I guess is typically male, when he sees a problem, he's going to go right forward. And he is extremely persistent. So he will keep at it because he has this goal, this mission in mind. Now, his persistence doesn't always accomplish, or frequently doesn't accomplish.
It's worse than that. It's self-defeating, and it perpetuates the problem.
Right.
So it's not just that it doesn't reach a goal, it's making things worse.
Right. Yes, and it does. And so, that's what we've been dealing with. So because he wants so desperately to hold on to them, wants to feel loved by them, and yet what he's giving back to them is pushing them away.
And this time forever.
Yes.
And this time that's when they're leaving, It's not like I have to go to work, I can't read you a book.
Right. Yeah. So that's what's going on. And I've tried to explain to him.
Yeah, I see that,
And we've been meeting with our pastor and his wife too, and they, but he does come home from you and he says, well, she told me this. It's like, oh, I'm glad you finally got it.
Well, do you feel like meeting with the pastor is helpful or hurtful to you?
It's helpful for me. Sometimes I wonder how helpful it is or how helpful he feels it is, because I'm sensing that he's feeling like everybody's ganging up on him. Mm-hmm. And so, all right, well, I will agree to whatever conditions you're placing on me, mm-hmm. but I don't like it, or I don't agree, you know, I don't agree with your position, but this is what you're telling me I have to do.
Right,
and
right,
so
right.
I must, because he's made statements, well, I must do this. You know, it's like you need to just, because he has made statements to me in regards to, for instance, dealing, well, it was actually between the two of us now that I remember what this was, because of his persistence when we get into some sort of a disagreement, mm-hmm. and it builds, and for quite a while there, I was getting to the point where I couldn't handle it emotionally because it was building up a lot of upset in me, and I said, Mike, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting angry, I'm getting out of control here, uh-huh. I need a break, I can't keep talking about this. He doesn't accept that.
He doesn't. So when you say, I'd like to talk about this a couple hours when I'm more calm, what does he do?
He thinks I should calm down in 5 minutes and he can come back and talk to me. And so when I say, I can't talk about this right now, in his mind, he finally admitted to me, he interprets that as being hateful.
You being hateful towards him?
Yes, because I'm telling him I can't talk anymore.
Got you.
Because, and this is back to his childhood and a stepfather who wouldn't talk to him, and so, or there are times when it's so built up in me, it's like, I gotta leave because he won't leave me alone, so I have to leave.
Do you have a safe place to go where you could get away from him?
Only if I go far away, where he can't.
Because
he won't leave me, no. I mean, there have been times when I've gone up.
Do you have a place with a locked door?
Well, we do have locks on our doors, but I've never really locked a door to lock him out. But
I don't want to leave today without making sure you have a safe place where you can regroup and get your sense of being solid back. Like, I want you to be able to, until we can figure this out. You really need that. He just said he went back to work.
Right.
He just said you went back to work, right?
Yes, I've been working.
You've been trying to mediate for all these years. You've been seeing these pictures. You know the kind of family you wanted, not quite working out. You know the kind of family he wanted, not quite working out. I mean, the stress and the tension of being constantly pursued to do something that's not productive, like, you need to have a safe place to go where you can breathe. And I just want to make sure that it's a car you have access to 24/7, or it's a place in your house where it's agreed today before you leave here, that's your space. I mean, I just want to make sure that physically, until you guys can work some of these things out, I just want to make sure you have a safe place to go. Because you can only handle this for so long.
Yes.
Okay?
I know
You're doing something right now, and you don't see an end. And I'm just telling you, you don't want the shit to hit the fan and just, like, not come back from this.
No, okay. Right, I know. Well, yes, I would love to have that. Okay. I mean, he has walked away and just left me in the room. Mm-hmm. But then he might come back.
Right.
And if I step outside the house and go where he doesn't know where I am, well, Pastor said just always let him know where you are. Just say I'm going, or even just to take a walk. He doesn't take that well because he feels abandoned, he said.
So this is one of those things where he says, I'll do it, but I don't want to, and I don't think it's right. Is that?
Essentially.
Well, I never say it's not right. Just.
Well, he says I feel abandoned by you.
Yes, so. And that's legit too. We just haven't got to that part yet.
So I said, well, I understand. I said, but I'm not your stepdad. You have to realize.
Okay, so you just said the key, which you just described the key to Mike's therapy and what we need to do in here, which is he needs to learn how to separate the past from the present. Mm-hmm. And he physically and emotionally and mentally cannot separate the 12-year-old Mike with the 45-year-old. He can't do it.
Right.
So he can't look at you and say, all right, you're safe. It's okay. You can go for a walk. We can resume this conversation in a while, because physically he feels like abandoned and threatened, and he can't. There's no gray area.
Yeah.
So
I realize that.
I just wanted to validate that is the whole point of therapy, is to be able to separate his past from his present.
And we did have a conversation about that recently. I don't know if you remember, where I said, look, you have to realize, I said, I understand that was in your childhood, and I understand that's, because I've been doing reading myself too, and
I bet.
where they talk about, you need to understand your childhood and your coping mechanisms you developed, but when you bring those into marriage, that doesn't work. And I said, Mike, I've got certain coping mechanisms that I realize I've got to learn to move beyond that and learn how to deal with things. You have your coping mechanisms. I said, so when I say I can't talk anymore, it's because I'm angry, and if I keep talking, it's going to hurt, because then I don't restrain myself. It's very difficult. And so you've got to give me time to process. And I said, I'm not being hateful, you know. So when Grace...
Hey, I just thought of something really interesting. What would it mean to him? Okay, I understand you don't want to blow up, because it probably terrifies you, because you probably saw it in your house.
Oh, I've blown up at him, though, and he hates it.
Right, but describe what happens. Like, what happens when you blow up? Like, you just can't take it anymore.
When I blow up?
Yeah.
He could probably describe me better than I can myself. I just know internally I am so angry, because I tend to bottle things. I am so angry that I have to move around physically, so my arms might be waving, and he says my voice gets louder. I'm not recognizing it at the time, but I know when it gets really bad, I don't restrain my words, and then if I'm feeling hurt, I might say something back at him, and I know my face looks ugly.
Do you physically hurt anyone?
I have in the past. I can remember 3 times where I've slapped him. Our 17-year-old son, 2 years ago, whatever, a year or so ago, I got so angry with him because he wouldn't listen to me, and I felt scared when he was driving.
He had a permit
pulled over,
permit.
and he's very similar to Mike.
Okay.
Their personalities are very, very much, which is also one of the reasons why they're always. So he's like, no, Mom, everything I'm doing is perfectly fine, because he came out of driver's ed that week and saying, I am and he sincerely believed this, I am the best driver. I am ready to take my road test now. Whoa. And he wouldn't listen to me because he was about to turn in an intersection across country. And I told him I freaked out, Mike, at that time, and because Ben wouldn't listen to me, I got to the point where I was going, Ben! So I was pounding on him.
But in general, when you're at home and you blow up, you're not going to.
I don't throw things.
You're not going to throw things or break things.
No.
I have never laid a finger on her, nor even started to lay a finger on her, nor done anything like. I have never, and she can verify that.
Well, I wouldn't. Actually, that kind of surprises me, because if you're that angry, that would, at least things around you, like, it would be hard to restrain yourself from not damaging things around you. But I just need to ask that, because sometimes people say they get really, really angry, and then they tell me what they do, and I'm like, that's anger. You know, you described it really well. Physically, how you feel, the things that come up, and stuff like that's real, you know, that's real anger. That's like facing it, you know.
When she said, I don't want to do things, I have never not wanted to meet with our pastor. That was...
Oh, no, that's not what she meant.
It's like the agreement was, if she wants to stop talking about something, she can stop talking about it.
And say you'll do it later.
Yeah, and I have never said that to a human being in my life. I can't talk about this. We have to talk about it later.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And so I'm like, okay, you know, let's just calm down.
Very rarely do two people want to do it under the same circumstances when they're both productive. So what you're doing is when it's it's actually detrimental to your relationship with people, that you can't stop and regroup. Like, it's damaging your relationships. So that's kind of what the pastor and Mary and I are trying to get, to have a system in place where you can realize that you're not like 8 years old and terrified and going to be left. Okay? You're okay, when do they have the inner child? You're about my age. You know the inner child stuff in 70s, 80s? It's kind of the thing to do is like talk about your inner child and taking care of it, but it's the perfect analogy for what's happening with you. And that's what happens when people are traumatized. I'm sure in your reading you've come up with this. Is you let that little boy control your life. And that's what your therapy is going to need to be about, is making sure that there's an adult taking care of you, which is really got to be you. Because right now you have a little boy telling you how to express yourself. And that's not to say you're immature. That's to say that you've been traumatized to the point where you're functioning from the point of view of a traumatized little boy, right? It's not saying you haven't grown up. It's saying that
conditioned response.
Trauma is controlling you. Yeah.
Like a guy who's been attacked by a group of teenagers. I was reading on they came out and it was a gang initiation, so he was stabbed a bunch. And so now when he walks down, and he survived. When he walks down the street and he sees him, he's got him. So, yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Like, there's a woven tree out in my lobby when you come in. Did you see that? Pretty cool, huh? I thought it was awesome. Well, apparently that's what the trees look like in Afghanistan. So when someone comes in here and they have to be deployed again, or they just got back, they would look at that tree and relive an entire experience, and they would even see things under that tree, like the kids they had to kill, or so that's kind of and I know that's kind of what I'm trying to get to you, is that's the kind of trauma you have when something happens in your house, and the fear of abandonment, the rejection, the wanting to control your kids, like that is all just instinctive. Okay, that's not through your head. That's not. We've talked about the Bible verses being a defense for him. He tries to recite the Bible verses like to filter things, and that they're not going to mean anything when it's it's a physiological, really raw response. How is the controlling your anger helping, or like working for you? Well, but now you look back on it. He's here. What's your take on your expressing your anger at home now?
Well, I haven't been expressing it as much. I've been reading. Are you familiar with Leslie Vernick? Okay.
Tell me the name.
She's a Christian counselor. She deals more with emotional abuse.
Okay.
So I've been reading a lot on her because that's what I'm picking up on. There's a lot of emotional, verbal abuse coming from him. That's right. It's not so much physical abuse, though he has apparently done some things that have caused
grabbed Ben and hurt him.
Yeah. Caused a fear response and...
Right. Well, sometimes... But tell me more about the emotional abuse and how you got to her readings, or what you're getting out of that.
So, he has problems... you understand this better than I do, but like, say for disagreements, if he holds a position and I might see something a little bit different, he doesn't take that well.
No.
So he gets all his resources, his verbal resources, and he's going to go at it. Me or anybody else in the family who holds a different, either completely different position or a different part.
Yep.
And he is determined to convince us to his position. I guess he needs the validation And so
he needs a validation but won't give it to you.
That's correct. And so it's as if I don't have a right to be my own person
Right.
with my own opinions, my own feelings, my own thinking. And so it gets really, wearing. And he can, when we're discussing things with him, he can actually twist things towards his advantage.
Using words.
He uses words.
Uses
He's very
words.
adept.
Yeah.
He's very skilled with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come out of it thinking all of a sudden, there's confusion. You don't quite, what happened here? I don't quite understand.
Yeah, where did this just go?
Yes.
How did we get here?
Yes. And, or if there's something that happened and you're saying, what you just said to somebody, this happened. It ends up, he'll admit it. He will readily, if he believes, he will readily admit it, but then all of a sudden the mirror gets turned and you're looking at yourself. And now we're focusing on the other person and what they did. And so,
right.
Because I said, Mike, why aren't we seeing a change in you? I know you apologize, you acknowledge, yes, I did that. That was wrong. I apologize.
So what's your guess about why you're not seeing a change? Just by him admitting it. Like, just through all your reading and kind of now that you understand the emotional dynamics, why do you think he's not changing?
Because I think he's still protecting himself. And he's not, because I've asked him, do you think through, now, when it's been brought to your attention that there's a problem, this happened. Do you think through, in the future, if something like this happens again, how do I want to approach that differently? I said, do you go through that? No, I don't. Because that's what I do. This
how
happened.
do I learn from this?
Yes, what do I learn from this? Now, what should be a different approach? In the future, I'm not going to do this, whatever. But he has admitted to me that, no, he doesn't think about that. So while
he wants it.
In the moment, I don't think about it. Oh, of course I think about it for the future. Yeah, if someone wants to I need to do this differently in the future. But in the moment, I don't think of it.
I was asking, do you think about it periodically, more than just that time? Do you think?
Well, sometimes we try to do that in here. Like, how did, that's one reason I need help from you is to find out at what point something can be different. Because I'm not really sure what's a realistic goal. So that's why I need more people on board to kind of see everything. So we've made a little bit of progress with that, a little bit. So we have, next time I would do this possibly, but there's so much more to it, as you know. There's so many more. There's no answer, there's no checklist, there's no list, and
so back to why do I think there's emotional abuse or verbal abuse going on? I'll bring up an example.
Okay.
This is not me, but this is our daughter Grace. I don't know if he's discussed this. He, in order to help fund her college education, he said, you could join the reserves. Did he discuss any of this with you? Okay.
I was mortified.
All right. So when ultimately she was feeling pressured, so ultimately she made the decision no. Okay, but she wants to please her dad.
I know. Yeah.
So, and I said, Grace, it sounds like a wonderful opportunity to me. So I was giving her the reasons why this is a good deal, but you go in and talk to the recruiter, ask them your questions, whatever. And so, but ultimately the way it panned out, she made the decision no. But as soon as he found out about what had happened when she brought up on her questionnaire, I don't know if he discussed that with you.
Not questionnaire.
When she was there in Lansing, they have this medical questionnaire.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever felt down? And so when she's marking this, he said, you've just blown your opportunity and you've made the recruiters look bad. And so you have, he said, you've ruined some man's career. So he confronts her with that quite harshly. And then again, he's at her again later on. So there were at least 3 times, and Grace is just standing there. She just takes it. But it's that it's not thinking, okay, how's my daughter feeling? How can I help her learn from this? It's, you have hurt these men, you've hurt me, because you've thwarted my plans for you. And so out of that hurt, he's giving back hurt to her. And so that's where I'm saying that type of emotional, verbal abuse that goes on, it definitely does go on in the house. Because he feels the sting. And so rather than pausing and thinking about what's going on,
which would require having an adult side of himself to be able to look at someone else's pain. But when you're hurting so much yourself, you can't see someone else's. Can't.
She told him in Lansing that the recruiters told her to lie.
No, she didn't use those words.
But, okay, so that we can go over. This is the thing what we can go over and over. So we're going to have the same conversation. How old is Grace?
21.
What the hell do you have no right to say anything about her career or choices, what she does with her body, who she marries, or where she goes. You don't have any right to do that.
That's right.
So,
I mean, we even
don't.
We had an episode this week. She made a decision to open her own checking account because she didn't want him scrutinizing.
Right, and that's the thing that that's just an example of, it doesn't matter if she messes up. It doesn't matter. He mentioned something about trying to educate her about like funds or something like that, how to use money, and I said you have no right to tell her how to use her money or what to do. She's just got to learn that on her own.
Right.
So same thing with that. And so the one thing that I have definitely picked up, you're helping clarify a lot of other things, is that you don't have any boundaries as a father. You don't know when it's appropriate to, I guess the word boundary is nebulous, but you butt into everyone else's business all the time, and it's not your job. And so we have to figure out, this is the fire we have to put out. We have to figure out how are you going to function in your life and still maintain a relationship with your children where they don't abandon you, basically, and feel so abused. We need to put out that fire. Find a way for you to say, oh, that's between those two people. That's between Grace and the recruiter. That's between Grace and her bank account, whatever. That's the fires. Those are the fires that I feel like I've been dealing with, while all the time knowing that we need to treat the abuse. So that's kind of why I want to know where to go from here. I'm like, what do we focus on? Do we need to get other therapists involved? That's another thing I'm considering. So I kind of want to know.
Well, I know for me, just from reading the Leslie Vernon, I'm learning how better to deal with it.
It sounds like it.
So I'm not getting so emotionally overwrought.
Yeah.
He and I had a conversation just 2 days ago. I mean, I am tired of the constant conflict. Mm-hmm. It's every day, virtually. But what was our last conversation where there was a disagreement? Oh, he was trying, the way he had dealt with our youngest daughter, Melody, and so he's trying to come back to me because I could tell Melody was upset. I wasn't there because I came home from work. And it just had to do with getting her to read a passage from the Bible for family devotions, and Melody doesn't. She says, I don't like to read out loud. And at one point I said, well, Melody, it's just your family. At some point you need to learn to read out loud. So it's a short passage, would you please read this? She did read it, but she's told me before, I don't like to do that, though she's in theater and she likes to stand in front of people and perform. Mm-hmm. So Mike's thinking is, I don't understand this. And anyway, so the way it ended up.
That's a control battle, and you have to choose whether or not to go for it or to be creative.
We talked. I said, it could be, it's a different situation. You come across these different words and names, and it's hard to pronounce them, and maybe she feels, self-conscious about that. I said, you could say, don't require that you read every evening. Maybe, there's several of us, each of us take turns reading out loud, or you could give her the passage ahead of time. Say, Melody, I'd like you to read this evening. Would you go through it first? So she's gone through it and been prepared. So we had talked about that, different approaches to handling that. And then he came to me and he said, well, his way of building his argument is he asks little questions. So we go incrementally, step by step.
Yeah.
So he comes to me with this, well, Melody likes theater, right? Right. And Melody wants bigger roles in theater, right? Right. Well, I have learned over time, especially with me, when he does this, I sometimes feel like I'm getting trapped on a particular
you
path.
are. He's spinning his web to get you in there, and then you feel helpless.
So I said, Mike, what's your point? And he says, no. He wanted to do the question and answer thing, and I said, well, I prefer if you tell me what your point is first, so I know where I'm going. And he told me that was unloving on my part to ask that of him.
And what's the truth about it?
No, it's not. And I
what
said,
is it?
What is for me?
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's helpful for me to deal with it if I know ahead of time. And I said, you know what? It's just a difference of preference. You prefer this way, I prefer this way. And then he's bringing up, well, Gary Smalley with an example there, and Nathan the prophet coming to David. And I said, you can't bring that up because that's the Lord, the word of the Lord coming to Nathan. You don't have the word of the Lord, and that's not what's going on.
So you agree with me that just in these emotional situations where the trauma has affected him so much, that the Bible stories and the Bible verses are psychological defenses so that he doesn't have to take responsibility for what's happening emotionally in the moment.
He does use, yes.
Okay.
He will
so, because I kind of needed, if I'm a Christian, people come in here and they're like, okay, tell me why this, how to live out this passage, blah, blah, blah. And, my degrees are in the integration of theology and psychology. I'm not going to throw one out with the other. So if Bible verses and black and white thinking and those kind of stories are used to manipulate your life so that you can get away with not growing as a person, I'm going to spew that out. So I just wanted you, when I say that, that you're using it as a defense, I just want to kind of explain that to your wife too and kind of get validation, because I don't want to look like the one who's like throwing out the Bible. Okay.
No, he has done that. So I asked him for a compromise. You tell me ahead of time what the point is, and then I'll let you, since I know where I'm headed, then we can go back to your question and answer routine, because he says, I'm building on principle. That's the way I'm thinking. And I said, that's fine. He didn't look really happy about that, but he did say, okay, I agree. And I said, great. I said, Mike, this is called compromise, which there isn't a whole lot of compromise with him.
Well,
but
you can't compromise if you don't hear each other.
Yeah.
Well, all couples do that. You can't compromise because you don't stop and see the other person's perspective. We just want to get there the quickest way possible.
My explanation was, I'm explaining my line of thinking, and if this premise that I'm giving you isn't true, well, then my conclusion's wrong. And so that's why I'm saying, is this true? And then I ask for agreement, because if the answer is no, well, then my conclusion is wrong. And so that's what I was saying when I said, well, she likes to read in front of other people in theater.
Okay, so pause for a second. Just like if we're just in a session alone, that way of talking to people is really damaging.
Okay.
Really damaging. So I know you're a thinker. I know you think logically, but when you have a conversation with someone like that, it's not appropriate, it's not helpful, it's actually harmful to your relationship. So when you choose to do that and you come to your wife with points like that, or to Grace, I've heard a few lists, every time you approach a person, a human being with that, you're harming your relationship with them.
Okay.
And sometimes I have to be black and white, because he thinks black and white, right?
He does, yes.
So when he comes in and says, doctor, tell me what to do, that's not therapy. That has nothing to do with therapy, but I'm willing to do it until we can get to the point where you can actually do therapy. So I have to give him black and whites now.
So it's better just to give the conclusion, and then if necessary, give the supporting reasons for the conclusion.
No. So let's back up a little bit more. So for a while now, he's been telling me about there'll be something going on, and then you guys will try to work it out and talk through it, right? And I say, if that takes more than 10 minutes, you're harming the relationship. Mm-hmm. So I can just imagine now what's going on and how you're both digging yourself in a hole and you're not going to get out, and the people in your house feel abused. So have you told him that before?
About abuse?
Feeling abused by him?
Recently, I have said, we don't feel safe.
Okay.
He doesn't like that.
Okay, so we don't have much time. I'm going to make a summary after this, but I want you to just try something in here, okay? Oh, can you put down your, okay. We have 10 minutes. That's my 10-minute thing. Someday this will work for me. Okay. So I was wondering if I could be here and create a safe environment to where you could communicate really what you wanted to. And I know a lot of times you're doing all this learning, growth, insight, trying to word things, trying to be healthy, and trying to help your marriage and your whole family, and you're working really hard at it. But I imagine it's just hard to communicate to them and feel heard, right? Mm-hmm. So just right now, that's not safe for you to do at home, right?
No, it's not.
You don't have a safe place at home. So I need to get you guys back in here quickly, as soon as possible. You need a safe place to go when you feel threatened, and you need a safe place to talk to him where you feel like you can be honest. So I just want to make sure I get that across to you. That I'll help you do that. But so right now, could you just say a couple sentences to him about what you're realizing in the last few years about the insight that you've had about your relationship? Like, you can say whatever you want to. You started with, I don't feel safe. But go ahead and just say it to him. And your job right now is to just listen and receive the content, okay? Doesn't mean you're agreeing. Okay. I'm still here with you, okay?
Don't feel safe discussing things where there's a disagreement with your position, or I have been feeling less safe about talking about something with the kids where I think that you might be disappointed or even angry.
I got to pause for a second, okay? Because I have to pause because I want to make sure that right now I'm slowing things down and it's going to hurt. But I need to make sure you heard that. So your job right now, we're on content. Reflect the content of what she just said back to her and start with the words, what I hear you saying is blank, okay?
What I hear you saying is, you are fearful of my response when you inform me of things that you feel I am not going to be happy about.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Did I get that right?
Did I get that right?
Yes.
And then you say, she talked a little bit longer, so say, is there more about that? Because don't say yes until he really, really gets it. Okay, so you say, tell me more about that.
Tell me more about that.
Well, because when you get angry, then you get harsh and stern, and you don't listen. So rather than listening to gather information and find out really what's going on with the person or with the situation, you're quick to make an assessment, and then you have determined what is the right course or how to approach it, and then it becomes a monologue, and the discussion is over.
Okay, slow down for a second. That's okay.
So what I hear you saying is, I hear you enough to respond how what I'm thinking is the better course, and so I give a monologue so that you will do things the way I would prefer. Right? Is that right?
He missed the feelings, so it's okay to say, no, I'd like to explain more that. He missed the feeling part.
Right. Yeah, you are making an assessment, but you aren't actually, because his purpose is not, your purpose, I feel like your purpose is not to find out how the other person is feeling, what's going on with the other person.
Okay, so how would this be accurate? Like, I don't feel heard, I don't feel valued, I don't feel like you know me.
Right, like.
Could you say that to him?
Yeah, I don't feel heard
or
valued, or that you really desire to know me inside, really, what I really think about something, what I really feel about something. You just want to know that I agree with you. And if
Excellent.
I don't, you're going to convince me to agree with you.
Excellent. Now let's just make sure you get what I hear you saying is.
What I hear you saying is that you don't feel understood, but I'm trying to understand how you feel, and that I'm only trying to show you how I think things should be.
Okay.
Right?
No, you missed some feelings.
I think ultimately it's understanding I'm a totally separate person with a potentially different perspective.
Good. Now
I hear you saying that you want to feel you're a totally separate person with a totally different perspective.
Right. And because I have a different perspective, that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. Or your perspective is always right.
Okay, pause.
So I hear you saying that you want to feel that your perspective is okay and that it's not wrong, and that mine isn't always the one that's right. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, hold on for a second. Okay, I let this go a little faster than I usually do because I usually nitpick every single word, okay? But we're short on time and so forth. It's important to slow down. I do not want you guys to do this at home. Don't do what we're doing here at home, because there's a lot of other steps, and we need to make sure your wife feels safe, where she can feel heard and feel that it's okay that she's a different person than you. And it's just a little too early for all that. There's too much going on in your house. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. There's too much going on in your house right now. The feeling words that I think you might have missed, which I wondered if you could tell her that you heard, were she doesn't feel known or valued or heard, and she doesn't feel respected as an individual. Like, she really thinks that you think she's an extension of you, and you're the same, and you're not the same.
Okay.
Can you try reflecting that back to her and see if it resonates with her?
So I hear you saying that you want your feelings, opinions, perspective valued more and validated, and that I'm telling you too much of how you should feel, or what you should, that you should decide the same way as me, and that's wrong, and I agree with you. And
No. We don't give a shit what you think right now.
Okay.
Not at all. This is about her feelings, and I think you added some things, so we're gonna stop right there, okay?
Okay.
But when you're listening to someone, it does not matter what you think, feel, and if you don't get it, you're going to stay in that moment until the content is perfectly reflected back. So that's, just when you do couples therapy, that's step 1, content. There's like 3 more steps, but honestly, people are stuck here forever because they do naturally things. You hear something that doesn't make sense. You're like, wait, I agree with this, but I don't agree with this, right?
I'm agreeing with everything she's saying.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that she doesn't feel like you think she's a whole person. Her feelings are more important than what you are saying right now. And this is what you do at home to devalue everybody around you. Because you say, yes, I messed up. Yes, I agree with you. Yes, that was wrong. Right? Right? That's your way out. That is an excuse for not changing.
Okay.
What you need to do is say, I hear you saying you don't feel valued, you don't feel heard, you feel differently than me, okay?
Okay.
So the black and white thing is, I know, a couple of things to leave with. One is, yeah, it's going to be hard. We'll have to come in again and do some more of this. So this is what I meant about the direction, right? I don't know whether to work, I work with people that have been through trauma. I do what's called EMDR. You might want to look up, you might have come across it. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, where you work through trauma to do exactly what we talked about, which is to separate the trauma in his life from what's happening now, so that he can stay present in the kitchen while you're disagreeing about a phone and act like an adult and be able to hear you and be in the moment instead of dissociate and be traumatized, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to get him to that point where he can do that. But at the same time, you need to live with your family, right? And learn how to get through the next few years. Can you kind of see the dilemma that I'm having with that? Like, do we work on the marital stuff, the communication, or do we work on your trauma? Can you kind of see my dilemma?
I have 1 job offer. I'm hopefully going to start Monday, so I'll be out of the house 10 hours a day.
Okay.
And so actually 1 job wants me to start tomorrow in Farmington Hills.
Okay, so now we have another whole thing to look at.
And that's a great thing. Not having income is a bummer.
Yeah.
And so that will help. And I'll be out and have less opportunity to be nitpicking on stuff. I'm probably going to be picking a job where I'm going to be working 3 in the afternoon until midnight, so I will have drastically less contact with everybody.
Okay.
For the next few years.
Yeah, which can be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big shift.
It's a new thing. I mean, the way he phrased, because he'll say this, well, I'll be out of your hair, which it's not like, that's not what yes, we want your bad way of dealing with us away, but we don't want you out of our, we love you.
Thank you.
Grace says, why have I stayed this long? She says, I love you. We want you to get out. Because you are, and I don't understand, you know better, because it's like, Mike, what you're doing is damaging the relationship. I told him that.
Yeah.
When you see, just speak, our pastor and his wife say, Mike, you're only in an advisory role now. You're beyond the control. They're not little kids anymore. Mm-hmm. Your job is just to advise them and save the being at them all the time. Save it for the big stuff that's really bad. The little decisions they make that aren't so good, they make the decisions. Let them learn from their consequences. Like Grace setting up a new checking account. You were so mad about that. And He said, well, does she know? I said, I told Grace, just do your research, because there are fees that they assess, but if she set up something, she'll learn. If something happens, like he said, well, I don't want her bouncing checks, so he kept putting more money into the account. And I said, well, the first time I could see that, you talk to her and say, hey, Grace, a check you could have bounced. But if she keeps doing it, she won't learn if she doesn't feel the consequences of her actions. You can't always be there to save, and you've got to let them grow up and make their decisions. He's trying to help them avoid mistakes, but by doing that, you're hindering their growth.
So you have your pastor, your pastor's wife, me, your kids, and your wife telling you that you need to stop telling your kids what to do. So what does that mean to you? How do you look at that?
People are trying to help me understand the transition from child to adult, and that I'm having too much, getting too involved in their business, and let them suffer the consequences or whatever, and I'm just there if they want to ask a question, but don't get...
So what do you say when let's revise this quick. I think I have 1 o'clock. So for an example, and I want to schedule you guys too, for an example, what is a healthy fatherly response to when a 20-year-old daughter, opens a bank account, right? What should your supportive fatherly role be in that situation? What kinds of things do you say to her?
Great.
Yeah, that's it. One word. Like, that's awesome. If you have any questions, let me know. But, everything's in writing, and I completely believe that you're capable of doing that.
Yes,
that's it.
That's what I should say. Positive things only.
You need to tell them that they're capable. Because every time you open your mouth, you're telling them that they're incompetent. So you need to say, you got this.
Okay. You got this.
Mm-hmm. And she really does.
Oh, she's...
Beyond. Because she's of the way she's been raised, right? She probably does a lot of things out of fear.
Yes.
Out of fear.
Well, she says, Mom, her sense at home is, I can't do things.
Right. Yeah,
but she says other people, and I'm glad she's got other people. I said, Grace, you are so smart. You are very capable. Yeah. But she has other people outside telling her,
she has a reality
so
check.
Yes.
She's very competent, very. Okay, I'm going to, let's figure out where we're going to go from here. Do you have health insurance?
Yes, we do.
Do you still have Blue Cross Complete, or are you getting